walking a... Number 8. Rebecca Savarese. On the morning of January 7th, 1994, 12-year-old Rebecca was walking alone to school in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. 43-year-old Louis Len Jr. came out from the bushes and stuck a pistol to Rebecca's back. He threatened her not to scream for help, then led her to his pickup truck. Rebecca followed his instructions. She walked alongside Louis, and just before she gets into the vehicle, Rebecca proceeded to scratch her neck and pretended she couldn't breathe. When Louis was caught off guard and didn't know what to do, Rebecca was able to break free from his grasp and run off into the woods. Louis tried to chase her while holding her backpack, but when another man appeared to help Rebecca, Louis gave up the chase, got into his truck, and drove away. He ran 2 red lights as he sped away from the scene, and 2 witnesses were able to get a glimpse of his car plate number. Authorities were then able to use this to track Louis's vehicle. 5 days later, Louis's truck was found just a few blocks from the scene, and inside, authorities discovered a loaded gun and Rebecca's backpack. Police then later arrested Louis, and they charged him with attempted kidnapping. Initially, he denied any wrongdoings, but a few weeks later, after a cascade of revelations followed, police charged Louis in another related abduction crime back in October 1990. He was charged for his crimes and was sentenced to life in prison. Number 7. Jeanette Tamayo. On June of 2003, 9-year-old Jeanette arrived home from school and found a strange man sitting on the couch. The man pointed a gun at her, and the two spent 30 minutes alone. When Jeanette's mother and her 15-year-old brother came home, the man attacked them, took their car keys, and then dragged Jeanette to the garage. Once inside the car, the man handcuffed Jeanette inside a box that was in the back seat. The man took her to an unknown house and tied her in the second-floor bedroom. He also put shackles around her feet to prevent her from escaping. In order to survive the ordeal, Jeanette pretended to be nice to her abductor to earn his trust. She talked about how much she loved her family and what she wanted to do with her life. She even told him that she's in love with him and wanted to start a family. The kidnapper eventually trusted her more and even let her walk around the house without being shackled. During this time, Jeanette developed an escape plan. She told him that she had asthma and that she is in need of medication. The man agreed to her request, and he dropped her off at the nearby convenience store. Once free, Jeanette ran inside the store and called the police. By this time, the man knew what Jeanette was up to, and he decided to drive away. Although the kidnapper was able to flee, he was eventually caught after Jeanette told police the man's cell phone number. During Jeanette's ordeal, she took a glimpse of the man's cell phone and was able to memorize his number. The police took this information and were able to trace it back to 26-year-old David Montiel Cruz. He was eventually arrested and sentenced to 100 years in prison for abduction. Number 6. Erica Pratt. On July 22, 2002, 7-year-old Erica and her younger sister, 5-year-old Nalia, were approached by 2 men in a white vehicle. The man in the passenger seat called out to Erica by her name. When the young girl went up to the window, the man grabbed her and pulled her inside. The car then sped off, leaving the younger sister alone. Erica was taken to an abandoned house on the north side of Philadelphia. Her kidnappers blindfolded her, tied her hands and feet with duct tape, and locked her alone in the dark basement. The 2 men then called the Pratt family and demanded for a $150,000 ransom. At the same time, Erica was working to free herself. For 5 hours, she chewed the tape around her hands until they were free. When she ran to the basement door, she found out that it was locked. She then quickly decided to kick out one of the panels of the wooden door and squeezed herself through the hole. When she got on the main floor, she smashed a window and started screaming for help. 2 boys who were playing in the area heard her shouting, and they immediately alerted authorities. The police rescued Erica, and eventually they were able to track down and arrest the 2 kidnappers, 29-year-old James Burns and 23-year-old Edward Johnson. They confessed that they had been stalking Erica for a few weeks, trying to figure out the best time to kidnap her for ransom. Since James was the getaway driver, he was sentenced to 19 years behind bars, while Edward was sentenced to 37 years. Number 5. Yi. On September 24, 2015, a 13-year-old boy who was only identified as Yi was abducted by 2 unidentified men from the streets of Dayang, China. He was taken to an abandoned house, where his hands were tied behind his back, and his ankles were bound together. A clear plastic bag was then stuck over his head with a breathing hole. During his ordeal, He recalled about gangster movies where people had been placed in similar situations. He knew he had to stay calm and follow whatever the kidnappers told him to do. A few hours later, when he heard them leave the house, he got to his feet, and despite being bound, he managed to hop from the room and eventually escape out onto the street where he was spotted by a passing motorist. Thankfully, he didn't suffer from any major injuries, and the two suspects were then arrested, but their motive for the crime remains unclear. Number 4. Benjamin Brockway. In the evening of June 8, 1994, 12-year-old Benjamin was riding his bike in Ottawa Hill, Ohio. When he stopped to fix the wheel of his bike, a man and a teenage boy in a red pickup truck pulled up alongside him. The three had an argument, and eventually the man grabbed Benjamin and forced him inside his truck. The kidnappers then took him to a motel room that they had rented for the past few days. They tried calling Benjamin's family home to demand a ransom, but after multiple attempts, no one picked up on the other end. After 20 hours of no response, the kidnappers decided to drop him off in a nearby neighborhood without receiving any ransom. Even though Benjamin had been blindfolded, he was able to give details of the crime scenes to the police and help them track down the two suspects and bring them to justice. He managed to peek while blindfolded and memorized his surroundings. He described the layout of the motel room to the police and even memorized the manufacturer's date that was printed on a car seat in the vehicle. With all this information, the police were able to arrest the two suspects, 24-year-old Eduardo Rios Ruiz and 16-year-old Arturo Tapia. Edward claimed that the 16-year-old was the mastermind of the crime. However, at the end, Eduardo was sentenced to 25 years in prison, while Arturo was only sentenced to 2 years since he was only a minor at the time. Number 3. Barbara Ann Stewart. In August of 1978, 12-year-old Barbara and her 9-year-old brother were walking home from school in Birmingham, Alabama. While on their way, they saw a young man with the trunk of his car open on the side of the road. As they came closer to the man, he suddenly grabbed Barbara and shoved her into the trunk. The man then threatened the 9-year-old boy that he would kill his sister if he tried to intervene or call the cops. The man immediately drove away. However, just for a short distance, he pulled over because Barbara was making so much noise. When he opened the trunk to check on her, Barbara unexpectedly attacked him with a tire iron that she had found in the trunk. She struck him multiple times in the head and then ran into the wooded area. She eventually stumbled upon some police officers who were looking for her after her brother called 911. Unfortunately, after hours of searching the area, the suspect was not identified and has yet to be arrested for the abduction. Number 2. Callista Cordova. On January 19, 2012, 9-year-old Callista was abducted by 29-year-old Jose Garcia, who had been following her from school in Colorado Springs. Although she tried to run away, the man grabbed her and threw her in his car. He then tied her hands together and gagged her mouth with tape. The man also threatened her, saying that he would hurt her family and find her if she tries to escape. Jose drove around all night and into the early morning. About 9 a.m., the truck he was driving broke down on West Woodman Road and Orchard Valley Road. A passing car saw the girl and Jose stranded on the side of the road. The man picked them up and took them to the nearby convenience store. When they got to the store, Callista made her move and ran inside. She asked the clerk if she could use the phone to call her uncle. Instead, she called 911. When Jose grabbed her, she began screaming and saying she was waiting for her mom. Eventually, Jose fled on foot, but the police were able to catch up to him and he was arrested at a bus stop 7 miles away from the store. He was charged for kidnapping and was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Number 1. Mitzi Sanchez. On August 11, 2000, 7-year-old Mitzi was kidnapped while walking home from school in Vallejo, California. She was alone at the time when a man grabbed her and forced her into his car. He then chained her to the gear shift and placed a blanket over her while he drove around for the next 2 days. Eventually, the kidnapper parked his car in an industrial area in Santa Clara, about 70 miles away from where he had originally taken her. When he left the car with the keys still in the ignition, Mitzi managed to grab them and unchain herself before climbing out the car's window. When her abductor realized she was escaping, he chased her. However, Mitzi was able to flag down a passing driver, which forced the kidnapper to flee from the scene. Thankfully, after numerous eyewitness accounts, the police arrested 39-year-old Curtis Anderson a few hours later. Mitzi was lucky that she made her break when she did. After Curtis was arrested, he was linked to 6 other related abduction crimes and was eventually sentenced to 300 years in prison. Today, Mitzi has spoken publicly about her ordeal as a way of supporting other child abduction victims.
Well guys, that's the end of this video. And remember, 5 subscribers, we're going all gaming. And see y'all later. Sniper, you're here. Bye.